The most powerful war in technology isn't fought with weapons. It's fought with chips. Smaller than your fingernail, but powerful enough to shape entire industries. This war doesn't stay inside Silicon Valley. It determines how fast hospitals process data, how banks detect fraud, how companies operate, and increasingly, which jobs survive. At the center of it is a company most people barely knew a decade ago, NVIDIA. For years, it quietly powered artificial intelligence. Now something is shifting. The companies that once depended on it are trying to replace it. At the same time, they're restructuring their workforce around AI, which raises a deeper question. If everyone's building smarter systems, why are the biggest constraints no longer in software? Why are they showing up somewhere else entirely? Because beneath the race for intelligence, there's another race happening, one that almost no one is talking about. And by the end of this episode, you'll see why the future of AI may not be limited by algorithms, but by something far more fundamental. Welcome to MarComTech-niques podcast, a podcast about marketing communications and technology. We help shape future conversations by exploring ideas that shape mindset, management styles, business journeys that influence industries through thought leadership. I'm your host, Jacqueline Cremona. Years ago, I walked into a store to buy a computer. I picked one that looked right, sleek, modern, powerful. A salesperson asked me, "What do you need it for?" I told him. He paused and said, "That's not the right machine." Then he pointed somewhere else. "You need to look at the GPU." That moment stayed with me because it reveals something most people miss. The real power of technology isn't what you see, it's what's underneath. And today, what's underneath isn't just chips, it's something deeper. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. A GPU is a graphics processing unit. It was built for visuals, gaming, rendering, video. But engineers discovered that same structure can process massive data. And that's exactly what AI needs. So now, CPUs handle tasks, GPUs handle intelligence, training models, running simulations, processing massive data sets. But here's what matters more. The more powerful the chip, the more energy it consumes. So as AI scales, so does its demand for electricity. And that's where the story starts to shift. Because once compute scales far enough, it stops being a computing problem and becomes something else entirely. For years, NVIDIA powered the AI economy. If AI is the economy, NVIDIA built the grid. Every major company relied on it. But now NVIDIA is expanding from chips to systems, infrastructure, networking, data centers. They're not just building faster machines, they're building the environment those machines live in. And that changes the game. Because once a company controls the system, it doesn't just participate in the market, it defines it, which creates pressure. Because no company wants to depend on a system it doesn't control. So the question becomes, if you don't control the system, what do you control? AI does not live in apps. It lives in servers, rows of machine, massive data centers, running constantly, processing millions of requests, and every one of those servers is consuming electricity continuously. A chip needs a server Servers connect into the cloud, and the cloud distributes intelligence globally. But none of this works without power. Electricity is what turns computation into something usable. We think of the cloud as infinite, but it's not. It's physical. It requires electricity, cooling, land, time. And here's the shift. The bigger AI gets, the more it depends on things that don't scale instantly, which means the limitation isn't the model, it's the infrastructure underneath it. And once that becomes a bottleneck, everything else starts to reorganize around it. So companies responded. They started building their own chips. Apple, Google, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft. Different companies, same strategy. Reduce dependence, increase control. But here's the catch. Even if you control the chip, you don't control where it runs. And if you don't control where it runs, you don't control how it scales, which means the race isn't just about building technology, it's about controlling what technology depends on. While this is happening, companies are restructuring, not shrinking, redesigning. The roles disappearing all share one function. They move information. And AI does that faster, at scale. But something else is happening beneath that shift. As companies reduce human labor, they increase machine labor. And machine labor runs on electricity. So the cost doesn't disappear, it moves, shifts from people to infrastructure. And that shift has consequences most companies aren't fully prepared for. Organizations are flattening, fewer layers, faster decisions, higher output, faster output. Most exposed roles, administrative coordination, reporting layers, support systems, entry-level analysis, volume content. Different roles, same functions. Information movement, now absorbed into AI systems, which increases efficiency, but also increases demand on the system underneath. And those systems are already under pressure. AI handles execution. Humans handle judgment. AI processes, humans decide. We move from operators to editors because AI doesn't understand context, reputation, consequence. But here's a deeper layer. Human judgment doesn't scale infinitely. AI does, but only if the infrastructure can support it. And that's where the tension builds because demand is accelerating faster than the systems behind it. AI used to assist. Now it acts. Agents manage workflows, send messages, execute tasks. Automation is now being reframed as agents, AI employees, digital operators, which means you're no longer scaling tools, you're scaling activity, and every action requires computation. Every computation requires energy. So as AI becomes more capable, it also becomes more demanding. And that demand has to be absorbed somewhere. Underneath everything, there's one system that determines scale: electricity. AI at scale is not just a software problem, it's an energy problem. Data centers consume enormous power, some as much as entire cities. But electricity isn't the only constraint. Heat is, because every unit of computation generates heat. And at the scale AI operates, that heat becomes a problem. Servers just don't power to run, they need cooling to survive. Massive cooling systems industrial airflow, liquid cooling. Entire infrastructures built just to keep machines from overheating. Now, every increase in AI usage does two things. It increases electricity demand and it increases heat output, which means you don't just need more power, you need more cooling, more space, more water, more engineering. You can't scale infinitely because at some point, heat becomes the limit. So the constraint isn't intelligence. It isn't software. It isn't even chips. It's physics, electricity, heat, and the systems required to manage both. The next decade won't be defined by better AI alone. It will be defined by three shifts. Who controls the infrastructure? How companies redesign work? And who controls the energy behind it? And NVIDIA may still lead, but the system is evolving. Companies are building their own chips, restructuring their organizations, and competing for something deeper than technology, power. Because AI doesn't just run on data, it runs on electricity, and it is limited by heat. And in the end, the companies that scale intelligence the fastest will be the ones who can power it and cool it. Now, while marketing focuses on reach, public relation shapes perception. Influencers amplify visibility. Thought leadership defines meaning. Here's a shift with AI. It is no longer about how, it's about who and when. While most are asking, how do I use AI, and experimenting inside borrowed systems, tools they don't control, infrastructure they don't own, and security they don't understand, those operating at a PR level are asking different questions. What is being built? Who will control it? When does it matter? Because the next constraint isn't access, it's power. Not just electrical power, but control. Control over infrastructure, control over narrative, control over timing. Who will use AI when power becomes limited? Because the real advantage in AI is not in using it early. It's in positioning when everything scales. So if you operate in marketing, you focus on attention. But if you operate in PR, you shape markets. This is the invitation to stop competing for visibility. Start positioning for authority. Because while everyone debates tools, tools will change. Barriers will drop. Competition will increase. Iteration will accelerate. But markets are not won in tools. They're won in perception, control, timing. Thank you for joining us on our podcast. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notifications, follow us, like, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform.